Then I'll introduce us. Okay, we are live. Okay. Good evening and good morning from wherever you are. My name is Damien, the tall, friendly Atheist Dad from the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. I'm joined by JJ, the archaeologian, as we read Frank Turek and Norman Geisler's I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. This is part 8 in the series. If you want to check out the other 7 parts, jump onto the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast YouTube channel, look at the playlist for I Don't Have Enough Faith to be an Atheist, and you'll find the other 7 parts. And on a couple of them, JJ actually makes an appearance as well. So I think this is actually your first full episode, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct, yeah, this is my first full episode.
Okay, because you kind of jumped in like halfway through because you had tech troubles
I know,
last time round. So.
I thought I had nothing better to do than just turn the computer on and everything would run smoothly, and of course.
Welcome to technology.
Seems to
anyway,
be fine now.
So have you got your copy of the book open?
I have got an electronic version of the book, and
fair
I do
enough,
have
because you were against giving Frank money.
Certainly, I was and still am. I have a version.
No. Well, as I said to you, I brought this book on the proviso that one of my deeply Christian friends bought Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris, and right. I think he got the better deal. I definitely think.
I do buy some of these creationist type things.
Yeah.
I do buy them occasionally. I mean, I bought Strobel's Case for Christ because so many people had been telling me about it, and oh dear me, it's in the charity shop now.
That's I really think that book should be called Lee Strobel's Case for Christ.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, but like I can say, like if that was enough to convince him, like. It's funny because as a journalist, I couldn't really imagine him really digging down deep into the skeptical case. It was like he either wanted to believe, or he wrote that post conversion in order to justify why he believed. Was the
yeah? Well, I mean, it was a Christian for almost 20 years before he published the book. I mean,
really?
Yeah,
okay.
It wasn't like he wasn't writing that as he was searching. You know, he was a pastor and everything for like 18 years before he actually published the book. I mean, that's a lot of Christians don't know that. So I've been in a few discussions and this is amazing, absolutely astounding. This guy set out to prove Jesus was wrong, and he became a Christian 20 years after he actually became a Christian, you know. So that's just one fact. I mean, there's many other problems with it.
Indeed. Anyway, we'll get on with the reading. So if you do happen to have your copy, anyone who's listening this on the live stream or watching on the recording afterwards, we're currently on page 77, and we're literally down at the last line. So with a big deep breath. And with a click of the fingers, we'll go from the last line of page 77 and straight on to page 78. So in 3, 2, 1. I didn't go down that road because I thought that he would take exception. Instead, I backed off the second law for a moment and decided to question him about materialism. If everything is material, I asked, then what is a scientific theory? After all, the theory about everything being material isn't material. It's not made out of molecules. Without a moment's hesitation, he quipped, a theory is magic. Magic? I repeated, not really believing what I was hearing. What's your basis for saying that? Faith, he quickly replied. Faith in magic, I thought to myself. I can't believe what I'm hearing. If faith in magic is the best the materialists have to offer, then I don't have enough faith to be a materialist. In retrospect, it seemed to me that this professor had a brief moment of complete candour. He knew he couldn't answer the overwhelming evidence in support of the second law, so he admitted that his position had no basis in evidence or good reason. In doing so, he provided another example of the will refusing to believe what the mind knows to be true, and how the atheist view is based on sheer faith. The professor was right about one thing. having faith. In fact, he needed a leap of faith to willingly ignore the most established law in all of nature. That's how Arthur Eddington characterized the second law more than 80 years ago. The law of entropy increases. The second law of thermodynamics holds, I think, the supreme position among the laws of nature. If someone points out to you that your pet theory of the universe is in disagreement with Maxwell's equations, then so much for Maxwell's equations. If it is found to be contradicted by observation, well, these experiments do bungle things sometimes. But if your theory is found to be against the second law of thermodynamics, I can give you no hope. There is nothing for it but to collapse in deepest humiliation. All right, so JJ, I'm going to pull back up a few lines here. This is something that we mentioned on our previous discussion. The either the outright fake analogies or the outright fake anecdotes,
yeah,
or the anecdotes that are a mishmash of maybe a few different anecdotes mixed together in order to create a super anecdote, which is then supposed to be taken at face value. Not that I've been around every single university physics department, but I cannot imagine a professor saying that he has faith in magic.
No, that's what keeps jumping out. I looked back a few pages when I got this version, and it's anecdote after anecdote, and they're not believable. They're just, he's talking to an idiot. An idiot happens to be
yeah.
No, it happens to be a professor. You're not telling me a professor of physics knows less about physics than this punter. There seems to be the same guy that Kent Hovind keeps sitting next to on a plane trip.
Matt Powell, I think you're referring to. But yeah. The other thing that I notice is that with these kind of analogies, the fact that they're anonymous really is a bit of a tip off.
Yes.
And especially in a book, like if you're on Twitter or if you're on Facebook, and you don't quite have much room or much time. Yes. Okay, you can kind of anonymize an analogy. That's okay, but when you have a book, and when you can control the narrative in as much space as you want, say for your editor, you can actually get into, I talked to a professor from, what's the university? Yale, let's say, for example, or London University, or wherever. You can actually go into a little bit more detail. Or he was like an adjunct professor, or he was a third-year student, or something like that. But it's just like all these anonymous professors seem to keep coming up in this book, or he's like anonymous Navy friend, or stuff like that. Because I do try to, like, when I write an anecdote, especially like in like a blog piece or something, I will try to give as much relevant detail as I can, because there was a time, I think it was about 5 years ago, I actually attended a conference by Creation Ministries International, and after the seminar, the presenter and I had a good talk about a few things, and I always use him and refer to him when I make an anecdote. And it's not necessarily to malign him, but it's to show that this conversation did happen, and here are some details. So I'm not just BSing you. Like, if you want to hold me to account, then sure. Whereas the anonymous Turek professor always seems to be unknowable. Is the way I think about it anyway. So anyway, I'll continue. I'll finish off this last part of the section. So 3, 2, 1. Since I could see that Professor was not really interested in accepting the truth, I didn't ask him any more potentially humiliating questions. But since we couldn't ignore the power of the second law on our own bodies, we both ordered dessert. Neither of us was willing to deny that we needed to replace the energy we had just used up. And that leads us on to the second part, the universe is expanding. So this is in the chapter titled, In the beginning, there was a great surge. So the S in surge is second law of thermodynamics. The U in surge is for the universe is expanding. Good scientific theories are those that are able to predict phenomena that have not yet been observed. As we have seen, general relativity predicted an expanding universe. But it wasn't until legendary astronomer Edwin Hubble looked through his telescope more than a decade later that scientists finally confirmed that the universe is expanding and that it's expanding from a single point. Astronomer Vesto Melvin Slipher was hot on the trail of this expanding universe as early as 1913, but it was Hubble who put all the pieces together in the late 20s. This expanding universe is the second line of scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning. How does the expanding universe prove a beginning? Think about it this way. If we could watch a video recording of the history of the universe in reverse, we would see all matter in the universe collapse back to a point. Not the size of a basketball, not the size of a golf ball, not even the size of a pinhead, but mathematically and logically to a point that is actually nothing, i.e. no space, no time, and no matter. In other words, once there was nothing, and then bang, there was something. The universe exploded into being. This, of course, is what is commonly called the Big Bang. It's important to understand that the universe is not expanding into empty space, but space itself is expanding. There was no space before the Big Bang. It's also important to understand that the universe did not emerge from existing material, but from nothing. There was no matter before the Big Bang. In fact, chronologically, there was no before the Big Bang, because there are no befores without time, and there was no time until the Big Bang. Time, space, and matter came into existence at the Big Bang. So, JJ, I can hear you furiously taking notes there. Was there anything that you wanted to say before I gave my thoughts on these few paragraphs here?
It's really just thinking back to these sort of, thinking about the beginning of the universe and expansion of the universe. These are the kind of things that really puzzle me, and obviously I'm not a physicist, so I don't fully understand. But I think, if there's no time before the Big Bang, how do we arrive at the Big Bang? These kind of things, these circular, going in circles, if time began when the universe began, then wouldn't the universe actually be eternal in that sort of way,
Well, actually, that's a good way of thinking about it. Like, I tend to refer to the universe as functionally eternal. There was no time point A where there was no universe, and then time A+1 when the universe suddenly appeared. It's just that for as long as time has gone forward, there has been a universe in whatever state the universe is in. There's always been a universe. And the other thing that this kind of grossly overlooks is the fact that, and I think I said this to you last time, was that once you get down to the quantum level, our classical Newtonian way of thinking just goes completely out the window.
Yeah.
So in a very, let's say maybe pre-quantum idea, it would make sense that, well, hold on, if everything came together at the Big Bang, then okay, there must have been some, how can I say, like, the gap that God could squeeze into was big enough. But then now we know how all this stuff works. Well, so I'll just say now we know how it works, but we have a really good idea. And at no stage have we gone to like a synchrotron and found a deity that has been a better explanation than what is in the than what we found.
What I do understand is introducing God seems to just confuse things. It seems to just make things more complex and more problematic. You're introducing something that may not even be there. The X factor, it's more or less what we don't know, well, that has to be God. But it seems to complicate things, and as many scientists say, we don't need, we don't need to add God into the equation. There's no reason to add God into the equation, but it is one of these areas that, my head starts to spin after a while. You're thinking, oh well, what did it expand into?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I get you. And the things are like, we may not ever come up with a complete answer, but I think Matt Dillahunty actually, he makes this point that when we try to find answers to something, we try to find answers using things that we know. We don't solve something we don't know by using another thing that we don't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I think that's a good point. And sorry, yep.
Sorry, when you go, sorry, I'll
No, that's right. Because I just noticed there's a gentleman named Maximo who's popped onto the chat, and he's gone Creatio ex nihilo, which is like that is a very religious position, and from my understanding, Maximo is a very religious person. Hey Max, how you doing? The problem is though that how do you prove Creatio ex nihilo? It's a very it's probably only found in religious books. It's not found in scientific books.
Yeah.
And look, it's probably a philosophically, it's like a philosophically easy way to get to God, but is it the correct way to answer how the universe came to be? So, and Maxie says, hi, and Maximo says, you just spoke about it. So, anyway, let us continue on. And I was going to say, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but when I was a wee lad in university, I did a semester on astronomy, and this is when I was still a Christian, and the evidence for the Big Bang and for the expanding universe and the fact that the universe is billions of years old, that evidence was pretty much unassailable. So I went from a young Earth creationist into an old Earth creationist, but it had to be creation because, of course, God.
Yeah.
But and the other point I was going to make before we go on was that on one hand you've got creationists such as Frank Turek, who seem to agree with the idea that the Big Bang does prove that the cosmological, what we find in cosmology, helps prove God. And then you have people at the other end like Kent Hovind and Matt Powell, who will go that who will say things like the curse of sin is affecting our telescopes, and so we can't trust either our eyes or our data or even our thinking. So we need to rely on the book to tell us exactly what actually happened.
It's not even as if it's a slight discrepancy between it's not like it's a magnitude of 5 or something like that. It's billions. It's like 6,000 years versus 13 billion.
Yeah, indeed.
Billion.
Yeah, the magnitude. Yeah, and just Maximo's just left a comment. You said the Big Bang came from nothing, and that the universe is expanding into nothing. Yeah, that would have been what's written in the book. I don't know. Me personally, I don't know for sure. The problem is we don't quite have a full answer of how the universe came into being, but the best minds have looked into it, and the answer seems to lie in quantum mechanics, which is something that you have to spend your whole life studying to begin to get your head around. But I don't know of anyone who will stand there with confidence and say, yes, there was literally nothing before the universe came, and then all of a sudden everything. I think that the universe we have is the result of natural processes that we don't yet understand. And I think from the theistic perspective, what they don't understand equals a deity.
And also, if scientists don't have 100% certainty, then they're wrong. That's another thing. Creationists and many, not all Christians, but many Christians, they need certainty. They need 100% certainty. Oh, so you don't know for sure? You don't know for that? No. Oh well, it's nonsense then. No. It's the best explanation that we have.
Indeed, yes.
And who knows how science will be in 100 years' time?
Oh, indeed. Well, they said I have this discussion about evolution, and I say to my creationist friends, if evolution gets replaced, I want it to be replaced because we found something better. My identity isn't tied to the theory of evolution. If evolution gets, upended and disowned by none other than Dawkins himself, excellent. But I want that to be because we've honestly found something that's better, not because we've been cudgeled into belief by, or cudgeled into disbelief because of, the great oration of a preacher. But anyway, before we get too sidetracked, we'll get back to the book.
Yeah,
so the last paragraph of page 79, if you are reading along. So 3, 2, 1. These facts give atheists a lot of trouble, as they did on a rainy night in Georgia in April of 1998. That night I, Frank, attended a debate in Atlanta on the question, does God exist? William Lane Craig took the affirmative position and Peter Atkins took the negative position. The debate was highly spirited and even humorous at times, partially due to the moderator, William F. Buckley Jr. Buckley did not hide his favouritism for Craig's pro-God position. After introducing Craig and his impressive credentials, Buckley began to introduce Atkins by cracking, and on the side of the devil is Dr. Peter Atkins. Now let me just quickly turn the page. William Lane Craig, there's a name that we could spend a few hours discussing as well.
Yeah, we certainly
Indeed.
could.
So now we're at the top of page 80. One of Craig's 5 arguments for the existence of God was the cosmological argument, as supported by the Big Bang evidence we've been discussing here. He pointed out that the universe, all time, all matter and all space, exploded out of nothing, a fact that Atkins had conceded in his book and reaffirmed later in the debate that night. Since Craig spoke first, he informed the audience how Atkins' attempt to explain the universe from an atheistic perspective. In his book, The Creation Revisited, Dr. Atkins struggles mightily to explain how the universe could come into existence, uncaused out of nothing. But in the end, he finds himself trapped in self-contradiction. He writes, "Now we go back in time, beyond the moment of creation, to when there was no time, and to where there was no space. At this time before time, he imagines a swirling dust of mathematical points which recombine again and again and again, and finally come by trial and error to form our space-time universe." Craig went on to point out that Atkins's position is not a scientific theory, but is actually self-contradictory pop metaphysics. It is pop metaphysics because it's a made-up explanation. There's absolutely no scientific evidence supporting it, and it's self-contradictory because it assumes time and space before there was time and space. Since Craig did not get a chance to dialogue with Atkins directly on the point, Ravi Zacharias and I stood in the question line near the end of the debate to ask Atkins about his position. Unfortunately, time expired before either of us could ask a question, so we approached Atkins backstage afterwards. Just going to quickly stop there. Firstly, there's another name that's notorious in apologetic circles, Ravi Zacharias.
Yeah.
So it's all we've got the big three. We've got William Lane Craig, Frank Turek, Ravi Zacharias. It's like great, but even then, it's interesting that there was a here we go. It is pop metaphysics because it's a made-up explanation.
Yeah,
There's absolutely no scientific evidence supporting it. But that could also be said about the theistic position as well, that it's actually made up. And if we go let me just see, there is Maximo just left another comment. Is nothing unchanging? What caused nothing to become something through the Big Bang? And before I let you say your points there, JJ, I'll just quickly answer Max's question. The thing is that we don't know. Like that is probably the most honest answer we can give at the moment. Is that, well, from my perspective anyway, I don't know. The people who study this, and I would suggest that you YouTube a debate between William Lane Craig and Professor Sean Carroll, Carroll, and he takes William Lane Craig to task about the concept of there being absolutely nothing and then, that kind of stuff. So Sean Carroll actually, But just to say that, but if you're going to argue that I don't know, therefore God, that is literally an argument from personal incredulity, or an argument from ignorance. Just because you don't know doesn't necessarily give you the space to squeeze God in. Now, sorry, JJ, you were about to say something.
I was just saying it's quite ironic that Craig was, or Turek in the book is saying that there's no scientific evidence supporting it. I just found that quite ironic at the time. It's exactly the same as his position, really.
Yeah, but I suppose you could say that he will admit that it's his position, whereas he's going to accuse the atheists of, like his fictional professor in the previous anecdote, where this alleged professor allegedly admitted to magic. Yeah, but the problem is like.
Yeah, of course.
Again, this is but the whole thing is because we don't know, therefore God, which is literally an argument from ignorance.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll get onto the where was I? Dr. Atkins, Ravi started. You admit that the universe exploded out of nothing, but your explanation for the beginning equivocates on what nothing is. Swirling mathematical points are not nothing. Even they are something. How do you justify this? Instead of addressing the issue, Atkins verbally succumbed to the second law of thermodynamics. He said, "Look, gentlemen, I am very tired. I can't answer any more questions now." In other words, his decrease of energy proved the second law was at work. Atkins literally had nothing to say. Well, according to the modern cosmological evidence, the universe literally had nothing from which to emerge. Yet, when it came to giving an atheistic explanation for this, Atkins really didn't really begin with nothing, but with mathematical points and time. Of course, one can't imagine how mere mathematical points and time could actually cause the universe anyway. Nevertheless, we wanted to press the fact that atheists like Atkins must be able to explain how the universe began from absolutely nothing. I'll finish this section off before I go. There is something I want to say about that section, but there's only 2 more paragraphs in here, so I'll... What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition. He said, nothing is what rocks dream about. The nothing from which the universe emerged is not mathematical points, as Atkins suggested, or positive and negative energy, as Isaac Asimov, who is also an atheist, once wrote. Nothing is literally no thing, what rocks dream about. British author Anthony Kenny honestly described his own predicament as an atheist in light of the evidence for the Big Bang. He wrote, according to the Big Bang theory, the whole matter of the universe began to exist at a particular time in the remote past. A proponent of such a theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the matter of the universe came from nothing and by nothing. So, that ends the section titled the universe is expanding. But what we have to remember is that they bang on about the second law of thermodynamics, and as we read previously, they kind of botch it up anyway. But what they also have to remember is that the first law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just transfers states. So even if, how can I say, like, regardless of how you think the universe came into being, you have to admit that the amount of energy in the universe is constant. Because the first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So that means in an isolated system, the amount of energy remains constant. So if you take this universe to be an isolated system, then yeah, all you really boil it down to is processes we don't understand. And if you're going to go by processes we don't understand, therefore God, then you are committing a fallacy. Whereas, if you accept the multiverse position, or or some other, or like a super universe that created our universe, then our universe is not an isolated system, and therefore it goes back to, again, processes we don't understand. But the problem here is that, and this is something that I find with presuppositionalists as well, is that there was this line about, nevertheless, we want to press the fact that atheists like Atkins must be able to explain how the universe began from absolute nothing. No, atheism doesn't mean you have to explain anything. This is the thing. Yeah. Atheism is just simply not believing that deities exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to explain anything. We can, and I think it's the more intellectually honest position that, we don't know. We don't know. We can't go, we don't know, therefore God.
No. See, atheist, it's only a position regarding one question. I don't go about thinking, I don't believe in God because the universe came from nothing. It doesn't equate. And to keep harking on here and emphasising nothing, absolutely nothing there. But is that really what physicists believe? I don't think it is. I don't claim to fully understand it, but Lawrence Krauss is the one who says that the scientist, physicist, nothing is not the same as the everyday guy's nothing. That nothing, how he explains it, nothing, that it is something.
Yes.
It's a bit like the word theory, like evolution is only a theory, which a theory has different meanings in different contexts, so I don't think they mean that absolutely nothing in the sense that the guy in the street would think of nothing.
Indeed, and this is the thing when Lawrence Krauss uses. I think Lawrence Krauss is famous for saying that the reason why there's something rather than nothing is because nothing is too unstable. Was his quip. But yeah, the problem is that if you're going to use a scientific term, it does help to think about it in the, and this might be something to do with science education, is that when someone like Lawrence Krauss or Sean Carroll say something, you have to make sure that you're understanding it as they mean it, otherwise it loses the flavour. Now, Maximo has left a few comments, so before we get to the R in Surge, I just want to briefly address some address some of the comments Maximo made, because he does, Maximo is a theist, and I actually welcome his questions. So his first comment is, what I would argue is, whatever caused something from nothing is God. That then, the problem then is that you basically reduce God to an unknown. Like you can say that God is the thing, the uncaused first cause, but then how do you prove that? You can say that and you can believe that, but then how do you actually? And this kind of comes down to why I personally am an atheist, is because I don't know what a deity is, I don't know what a deity does, and I don't know what they're capable of.
It's nice to have a range of views, and it's fine to say I can argue that God created something from nothing, but if you're going to argue it, what are your arguments for that? Why God and not something else, something that we don't know yet?
Or I think the example used is universe creating pixies. Like, the universe began from nothing, therefore universe creating pixies. Maximo's next comment is, Damien, I could easily say you're committing the fallacy, which is interesting. Okay, well, thank you very much, because in his next comment he goes, the fallacy is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone assumes that if an argument contains a logical fallacy, then its conclusion must be false.
The conclusion can be true, but not for the reasons given in the argument.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so your conclusion can be true, but the actual argument leading to that conclusion is, so even if your conclusion is correct, for us to be convinced, you then need to actually, it's a little bit like like being wrong. It's like being right, but with the wrong equation, kind of thing, like in a math test. Next on the comments is Randolph Richardson. Hey, Randolph, how you doing in Canada over there? And I'm sure he'll type something in the comments. Maximo go, you cannot prove otherwise. The problem, though, is that we can't prove anything right now because of our limited understanding. We are on this little ball of dust in a minor star, in a minor galaxy, somewhere in the corner. So I think the fact that we've gotten to the position that we have now is quite amazing. So, and again, maybe in 50, 100 years' time, things will be different. The next comment from Randolph is, deities vary from one religion to the next, and also from one believer to the next. That's an interesting point, Randolph. Again, you then have to prove what a deity is, and the thing is, probably the most cogent definition I get is a spaceless, timeless, powerful being. But the thing is, I don't know what a spaceless, timeless, powerful being is.
Yeah, it used to really.
That's all right.
It used to really annoy me when even my atheist friends, I'm going back a few decades now, when they used to say, "Which God?" That really, because at that time, everybody just assumed it was a Christian God that the forums and discussion boards were talking about. But as time's gone on, I think that it's really a relevant question, because what I have noticed now is some Christians are sneaking a diet version of God into the argument.
Diet God.
Okay. Diet God. Especially the pre-suppers, they're arguing for this vague, sort of mindless, bodiless, disembodied mind, which is nothing like the Christian God that they're going to argue for 20 minutes down the road, So they're arguing for something you cannot falsify, some vague entity, and then they say, that's a Christian God, though. So it is important which God we're actually talking about.
Indeed, and you have to kind of define what that God is. If you go with the generic spaceless, timeless being, then okay, but what is that? Maximo then also responds, not among mystics, but the problem is we're so far behind in the comments, so I don't know what it's. So Max, if you can clarify that comment for me, that'd be great. Max then also goes, if you cannot prove either way, why do you err on the side of atheism? Because of the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is basically that your positive claim is incorrect until you can prove it. And so the positive claim that a God exists and a God created the universe is false until we can prove, until we can conclusively prove that a deity does exist. And the first thing to do is define what a deity is and what a deity does. And the next comment here from Randolph, Randolph is doing well. That's great to hear. The time here is 3:42 in the morning, and he's up at an unusual time. And glad to find the podcast is running live. Yes, the YouTube channel. I find that reading books is a great way to think about ideas, talk to guests, understand what people are thinking. And if you look on the YouTube channel for the podcast, there's half a dozen other books that I've been reading through. Probably the most controversial one is On the Jews and Their Lies by Martin Luther. That is very, very interesting reading. There's also Bible Defense of Slavery by Josiah Priest, and another book I'm reading is Christian Slaveholders Disobedient to Christ. That's a bit of an interesting one as well. But Randolph, thank you for watching or listening, whatever you're doing, and thank you for commenting. Great to see your name on the chat, just like you too, Maximo. Thank you very much. Love the interaction. Anyway, so we're currently on page 81, and we're about to go into R, radiation from the Big Bang. So S was second law of thermodynamics. U was universe from nothing. The universe is expanding. And now R is radiation from the Big Bang. The third line of scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning was discovered by accident in 1965. That's when Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson detected strange radiation on their antenna at Bell Labs in Holmdel, New Jersey. No matter where they turned their antenna, this mysterious radiation remained. They initially thought it might be the result of bird droppings deposited on the antenna by nesting Jersey Shore pigeons, so they had the birds and the droppings removed, But when they got back inside, they found that the radiation was still there, and it was still coming from all directions. What Penzias and Wilson had detected turned out to be one of the most incredible discoveries of the last century, one that would win them Nobel Prizes. These two Bell Lab scientists had discovered the afterglow from the Big Bang fireball explosion. No, it was not a fireball explosion. And this is something that creationists also, go, oh, nothing exploded. How does nothing explode, huh? It did not explode. It expanded.
Yeah.
This is the thing you have to, where was I? Technically known as the cosmic background radiation, this afterglow is actually light and heat from the initial explosion. This light is no longer visible because its wavelength has been stretched by the expanding universe to wavelengths slightly shorter than those produced by a microwave oven, but the heat can still be detected. As early as 1948, 3 scientists predicted that this radiation would be out there if the Big Bang really did occur, but for some reason no one attempted to detect it before Penzias and Wilson stumbled upon it by accident nearly 20 years later. When the discovery was confirmed, it laid to rest any lingering suggestion that the universe is in an eternal steady state. Agnostic astronomer Robert Jastrow put it this way: no explanation other than the Big Bang has been found for the fireball radiation. The clincher, which has convinced almost the last doubting Thomas, is that the radiation discovered by Penzias and Wilson has exactly the same pattern of wavelengths expected for the light and heat produced in a great explosion. Supporters of the steady-state theory have tried desperately to find an alternative explanation, but they have failed. At the present time, the Big Bang theory has no competitors. In effect, the discovery of the fireball radiation burned up any hope in the steady state. But that wasn't the end of the discoveries. More Big Bang evidence would follow. In fact, if cosmology were a football game, believers in the Big Bang would be called for piling on with this next discovery. And so the next section is called G, Great Galaxy Seas. But before we get to that, let me just check if okay, no more new comments. But yeah, if you're listening and want to comment, feel free to comment. Now, just trying to think. My biggest thought with this one, JJ, is that there is absolutely nothing in the Bible that supports this.
No.
If we took away all scientific knowledge and read only the scriptures, and even if we prayed hard enough, and even if we fasted and prayed and we went to the top of a mountain and we spent 40 days and 40 nights, conversing with the cloud, we would not get this.
No.
And so my pithy quote is that God needs us to teach him science so he can tell us how he created the universe.
Yeah. Didn't Voltaire have a good quote about if the Bible was God's word, then God's a terrible geographer and scientist and things like that. Actually, yeah, really quite caustic, but it was good.
He was indeed, yes. I think he also said if God didn't exist, it would be necessary for man to invent him.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good quotes, Voltaire, but the Genesis follows, the other ancient Near Eastern cosmologies, and they didn't even have a concept of the universe. These guys, there's no Hebrew word for universe. They talk about.
There's no Hebrew word for planet either, or star.
No. So lights and, but they just talk about it as being everything. Everything. God made everything, which to them would be the immediate world round about them, and the sky was. And I don't care what creationists say. The Bible does say that the firmament was thin hammered metal, that God had separated the waters from. So, reading the Bible, to me, my Twitter name is Bible Mythology because that's what my interest is. As mythology, these early books, like Genesis 1 to 11 in particular, and other ancient Near Eastern myths, and this is what it is. They're trying to explain what they didn't know.
Yep.
How could they know? They didn't have pre-scientific civilizations then, but it made sense to them, and it also had, it had other functions as well. Explaining why certain things are the way they are, like why are women, say, subject or inferior to men.
Yeah.
These kind of things. So these myths, they all had the functioning reasons for existing, and this is how they explained, how they thought the world was. But there's nothing scientific going on there. What would you actually...
No, because... Yeah, I was going to say, because I get the response that if God tried to explain these advanced concepts to people, it will be like trying to explain to Moses what a TV is. And, well, that then means that God cannot find a way to communicate advanced concepts to us before, they had any way of knowing what they were. Even if, God, brought down a thesis or a document or a picture from heaven and then snuck that into the Torah, for that picture or that thesis to be carried forward. But no. Just reading Maximo's comment here. My theory is something contracted to such a small point that it created a vacuum of nothing. From the small point, a laser-like light stretched out through the expanse and pierced the void. That sounds a bit like quantum mechanics. Now, actually, there's one point I forgot to mention with all this. The Big Bang does not explain how the universe came to being. All the Big Bang explains is how the universe expanded, how the universe went from one state to another. It doesn't explain how the matter and energy in the universe got there in the first place. And this is one thing that maybe we forget. It's a bit like evolution and abiogenesis. That when you say that you believe in the theory of evolution, how did life get here? Well, evolution is about how life got here. Evolution is about how life changed from one stage to another. And that's what the Big Bang is. The Big Bang is, how the universe went from a small, hot, and dense state into a cool, sparse, and cold state. And then Maxi's next comment is, this was just prior before the Big Bang. Maxi, I get that you believe that, and I respect that you believe that, but how do you prove it? Is the next question. So from there, and it looks like Randolph's dropped off the chat, probably because it's 4 a.m. Yeah, exactly. The poor guy. No, I did invite him onto an earlier... That same one I invited you on before, I invited him on, and you were both tired from late nights and all that, so... poor guys. Anyway, so I'll go on to G, which is Great Galaxy Seeds. 3, 2, 1... After finding the predicted expanding universe and radiation afterglow, scientists turned their attention to another prediction that would confirm the Big Bang. If the Big Bang actually occurred, scientists believe that we should see slight variations or ripples in the temperature of the cosmic background radiation that Penzias and Wilson had discovered. These temperature ripples enabled matter to congregate by gravitational attraction into galaxies. If found, they would comprise the fourth line of scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning. Now, just on that, just the fact that the universe had a beginning doesn't mean God. This is something I struggle to get my head around. Was that, just because you prove the universe had a beginning, doesn't mean a deity. And this is why I love universe creating pixies, is because, you can go, the universe had a beginning, therefore universe creating pixies. Oh, we should say hi to Randolph, because Randolph is still listening. Hey, Randolph.
Oh, he's still there.
The poor
There's
guy.
He's going to be this leap. It doesn't matter what the argument is for the existence of God. It always comes to a point where a leap of faith has to be made. Now, there's nothing leads directly to God. And I think earlier in the book they gave an example of a car doesn't just appear from nowhere, and it's a common mistake that Christians make, and rate comfort's particularly bad for us as Kent Hovind. They equate something that we see being manufactured with nature. You know, a building always has a builder, and
a painting has a painter.
And Kent Hovind, my skateboard won't become a Ford Mustang or something like that.
Yep.
We're talking about a universe here. We're talking about a natural thing, or a flower, or, or a human body, whatever. And they seem to equate the two as if it's a valid comparison. And just like, come on,
well, in their mind, it is, and that's why people like Kent Hovind have to go to unaccredited colleges to get unrecognised PhDs.
Yeah. 4 of them apparently has now.
Lucky him. But people like us who care about what we believe, you went to an accredited university and got an accredited degree, and you actually took the time to study the fields, whereas someone like him will go to his mate who runs a Bible college out of a let's say a shack, for want of a better word. And and so he gets that, and he bypasses all of the the checks and balances and the academic rigor that other people like you go through to get the qualifications you have. And this is why I say that Kent Hovind's PhD says more about the institution that gave it to him than him himself.
Well, it's just a degree mill or diploma mill, isn't it? I mean, when I first heard of Kent being a PhD, I'm thinking, he doesn't even have a bachelor's or anything. I mean, he just can't do that. I mean, certainly not here. I mean, here you've got to do your bachelor's and a master's, then a PhD, depending on which subject. But in the fields that I went into, I had to actually get an honours degree before I could do the master's. A normal degree wasn't acceptable. I had to be invited to do honours before I could go on to do the masters.
Yep, that's the thing. Like you said, you had to do the hard work to get that masters, whereas Kent Hovind just rocks up with a wad full of cash and a 101 page document, and wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Anyway, we'll continue on the book. 3, 2, 1. In 1989, the search for these ripples was intensified when NASA launched the $200 million satellite, aptly named COBE, the Cosmic Background Explorer. Carrying extremely sensitive instruments, COBE was able to see whether or not these ripples actually existed in the background radiation and how precise they were. When the project leader, astronomer George Smoot, announced COBE's findings in 1992, his shocking characterization was quoted in newspapers all over the world. He said, "If you're religious, it's like looking at God." University of Chicago astrophysicist Michael Turner was no less enthusiastic, claiming that the significance of this discovery cannot be overstated. They have found the holy grail of cosmology. Cambridge astronomer Stephen Hawking also agreed, calling the findings the most important discovery of the century, if not all time. What did COBE find to merit such momentous descriptions? COBE not only found the ripples, but scientists were amazed at their precision. The ripples showed that the explosion and expansion of the universe was precisely tweaked to cause just enough matter to congregate to allow galaxy formation, but not enough to cause the universe to collapse back on itself. Any slight variation one way or the other, and none of us would be here to tell about it. In fact, the ripples are so exact, down to 1 part in 100,000, that Smoot called them the machining marks from the creation of the universe, and the fingerprints of the maker. But these temperature ripples are not just dots on a science graph somewhere. COBE actually took infrared pictures of the ripples. Now, keep in mind that space observations are usually observations of the past because of the long time it takes light from distant objects to reach us. So COBE's pictures are actually pictures of the past. That is, the infrared pictures taken by COBE point to the existence of matter from the very early universe that would ultimately form into galaxies and clusters of galaxies. Smoot called this matter seeds of the galaxies as they exist today. These pictures can be seen at COBE's website, lambda.gsfc.nasa.gov. These seeds are the largest structures ever detected, with the biggest extending across 1/3 of the known universe. That's 10 billion light years, or 60 billion trillion miles. Now, you can see why some scientists were so grandiose in their description of the discovery. Something predicted by the Big Bang was again found, and that something was so big and so precise that it made a big bang with scientists. Oh boy, I don't. I was going to say I don't miss the Christian dad jokes.
No, I don't miss them either. But there seems to be a wee hint of the fine-tuning argument being introduced there. The ripples show the explosion, and the expansion was so precisely tweaked. And of course, only a god could have had it tweaked to this exact amount, So that seems to be a wee, although they don't come out and mention it, I dare say they probably will later on. The fine-tuning argument will make an appearance.
Well, yes, as I was about to say, the fine-tuning argument, but then like that kind of makes God like a craftsman in a workshop.
Yeah.
Whereas like we're not talking about pre-exist. Well, hold on. It depends on how you look at it, because if you want to like make it like God in a workshop, then you're talking about pre-existing matter that God is then like monkeying around with and like shaving things down and all that kind of stuff. Like even if you want to make the fine-tuning argument, that again is basically just a philosophical argument, because you can't explain how things became so precise. And again, that is an argument from incredulity. Just because I don't know how these factors became so precise. Because humans couldn't make them, therefore it must have been a superhuman intelligence. And again, that's like a category fallacy.
Yes.
And just looking at Randolph's comment here, found out a few years ago that the going rate for a PhD at many diploma mills in the USA is approximately $900. That is both interesting and scary. But JJ, wasn't there a degree mill that you linked to in a Twitter debate we were having, and I think it was called Stonewall College or something, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. It definitely rings a bell. I think they were about $2,000 though. I think it was roughly about 2,000. But
No. There was a website where you could like instantly get a PhD in something. So I got myself a doctorate in parapsychology.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and you just drop down a form. You tell them what faculty and what diploma you want, and that it generates the PDF certificate, and you can instantly get your degree.
I think it was actually Hoven's degree cost $2,000. I'm sure that's what it was from the Patriot University.
Yep.
This is $2,000. But I mean that's a scary amount of money. I mean, if you wanted, one of the reasons I didn't want to do a PhD here was the amount of money it cost. It cost tens of thousands of pounds. I mean, people need to really either need to be very rich or get sponsored or have grants or something like that. Get someone to back you, because you're talking about 40,000 quid. Talk about a lot of money, plus the money that you won't be making from being employed. Because I was teaching at the time, and teachers get a decent wage here. I would have to work part-time, so you're losing that wage plus paying for...
Yes, that was the other thing I was going to mention, was that you're paying to study, but then you're also, because you're studying, you're not working, which is like you're paying both ways. And I know someone who was going for their masters, and she was working full-time for a year as well as studying, and she was like pulling all these crazy hours. And then I met her the year after, and she said, like, Damien, that was like the year from hell, but this year I've got enough money and I can actually live and breathe and have a little bit of breathing space, because she put herself through hell. And this is the thing, people like you and other people put themselves through hell, whereas Kent Hovind just chucks a check and wham bam, thank you ma'am.
Someone else's money as well. Some money he was donated But and I was fortunate when I was doing my masters that I was able to tutor in the university as well. I was very fortunate.
Okay, yep.
You know, so I mean, a lot of tutors were only getting 1 or 2 hours a week. And I was getting like sometimes 7, 8, 9 hours a week, and because I could work in both departments, and I was doing archaeology and theology, so I was able. I was fortunate enough to actually get work in both, mostly theology.
Yep.
And work in the bar at night as well. You know,
well, there you go. And I'm sure in Scotland that was one of the most important things.
It was a hard shift some occasions. You know, but that's another story.
Yeah. But I am glad to see that Frank Turek confirms billions of years. Well, actually, no. He confirms billions of light years, but that's not quite the same as confirming the universe is billions of years old. But because I'm sure Kent Hovind will also say, look, billions of light years is just a measurement. It doesn't tell you how long the light took to get across.
And God could have created it already on the journey and things like this. I mean, that's
indeed.
Another creationist one. The light was created 6,000 years away. Why he's doing this, I don't know. Why God's up to all these shenanigans.
I know. He's a very tricky God for a God who cannot possibly lie. He certainly lies a lot. Anyway, I was going to say, JJ, we've got one last section left in this surge, so we'll read that. It'll be about an hour that we've read. So we'll let Randolph go to bed if he's so inclined to go to bed. Okay, so E is for Einstein's theory of general relativity. So we've had just a recap for our listeners. S was second law of thermodynamics. U was the universe is expanding. R is radiation from the Big Bang. G is great galaxy seeds. And E is Einstein's theory of general relativity. 3, 2, 1. The E in surge is for Einstein. His theory of general relativity is the fifth line of scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning, and its discovery was the beginning of the end for the idea that the universe is eternal. The theory itself, which has been verified to 5 decimal places, demands an absolute beginning for time, space, and matter. It shows that time, space, and matter are correlative. That is, they are interdependent. You can't have one without the other. From general relativity, scientists predicted and then found the expanding universe, the radiation afterglow, and the great galaxy seeds that were precisely tweaked to allow the universe to form into its present state. Add these discoveries to the second law of thermodynamics, and we have 5 lines of powerful scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning, we might say, that came in a great surge.
Impressive.
As I said, I don't miss Christian dad jokes. But it is good to know that Randolph's going to be up for a while. So
all right.
Yeah. Hey Randolph, whatever you're doing, don't let us bore you. Not at all. But yeah, what I've just noticed is that, like, I don't know if they got lazy as they kept on writing, but their first point, the second law of thermodynamics, they expanded for that on, let me just double check, over 2.5 pages they wrote for the second law of thermodynamics. Then for you, the universe is expanding was, again, 2.5 pages. Then radiation from the Big Bang is 1 page. Great galaxy seeds is like a tick over a page in a paragraph. And then Einstein's theory of general relativity gets 2 paragraphs. I'm just wondering, well, okay, that's that is interesting. Maybe they realized they couldn't really make a case using Einstein, so they just go, oh, look, Einstein proves God, guys. Okay, that's fine.
What they could have done there for a Philistine such as myself is actually explain what the theory was or is. If I had a student's essay in front of me, I would be saying, well, you should actually explain what the theory is, not just assume that the reader knows what the theory is.
Indeed, and for something so technical, like even if you say, look, it's very technical, okay, but like again, I could just say universe creating pixies, and expect you to know and to accept that everything I'm saying about universe creating pixies is true. And it's a bit yeah, like
did you say the theory itself, which has been verified to 5 decimal places? You think, well, what is the theory? What is the theory?
Yeah, exactly. And I actually do find just while we're on the discussion of general, I'm thinking special relativity. I think E equals MC squared was special relativity, and then general relativity was the time speed displacement. If I'm not mistaken, but this is the thing, because we don't have that deep understanding. You know, we kind of behind the 8 ball on the topic, but yeah, like I was discussing with someone before about Richard Carrier, and how when Richard Carrier writes a book, he puts like tons of references in his book. And the book I'm thinking of in particular is On the Historicity of Jesus. Now, whether you believe in mythicism or not, the fact that Richard Carrier in his book, like some of the pages, like 2/3 of the page are literally footnotes from all the references he's got. In here, we've barely got a dozen across across 80 pages, which kind of says that, well, look, if you're trying to present a straw man of atheism, if you're trying to present a weak version of science, if you're trying to present a very partisan case, do exactly what you're doing.
These are quite vague, a lot of the explanations, and there isn't a great list of notes that you could actually go and look. I mean, see a lot of these quotes that I'm looking at here, the skeptic in me is going, I wonder if that's what they're actually seeing. Are they being represented fairly? Because you know what they're like with quote mining. What's the context of the actual quote that they're giving?
Don't get started on quote mining. It's like,
is that one of your pet peeves, is it?
It is a little bit, especially in the creation evolution debate. Someone will pull out a quote about Charles Darwin going, what did he say? If I could find any evidence to the contrary, my theory would fall over. But then he says in the next paragraph, but I find absolutely no evidence. It's like, well, again the quote mine. But anyway, so that will then take us to, so the next section we'll read in the next part. So this is part 8, and yeah, we go for about an hour at a time, because reading and thinking for an hour at a time does wear out old men like us. But yes, I'm just actually going through. So we're currently on page 84, and the next section is called God and the Astronomers, and the chapter ends in page 94. So we've still got about 10 pages to go, which will probably be a couple of parts. But look, the more pages, the more guests, the more discussion, the more material I can drag out of this book. So thank you very much, Frank.
Well, in my version, I'm at page 135 of 700.
Oh, you have the corrupted seed that the Roman Catholics wanted you to have.
Yeah. But I've still got God and the Astronomers, so I might have a wee read ahead of that actually. And
sure.
Take a few notes.
Sounds good. And yeah, in the meantime, I'll contact you privately on Twitter and see if you're available. And
yeah, we'll get another time. I'm getting I've been trying to build a website, and I've been typing up some essays. That's taken up the bulk of my time, and then of course planning that, you forget all sorts of other things, all sorts of personal things in your life come up that you don't plan for, and you spend days on that. And sometimes you get on Twitter and you end up spending hours there when you don't plan to spend a few minutes, And I do get quite a few emails as well, and a few private messages to answer.
So you do keep yourself busy. That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's important to keep yourself busy, especially during the lockdown.
Indeed. Like I was going to say, I've been producing like two readings a day. So the one in the morning I have with friends in the US, and then the one I do with you at night. And yeah, that actually keeps me going. And the joke I like to have is that if God hates what I do, then he should find a cure for COVID so that we can end the lockdown immediately and I stop producing all this content that pisses him off.
I just hope Copeland's still
blowing the wind of God.
COVID away. I wonder what excuse he's going to come up with. Eventually, if it does go away, he's going to say,
my prayers finally worked.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that was good. Anyway, good. JJ, I'm gonna leave it here.
Yes.
So, to everyone listening, to everyone watching either on the live stream or on YouTube after this has been broadcast, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, I hope you stay safe. Look after yourself. That has been JJ. You can find him on Twitter at Bible Mythology. I've been Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad. You can find me on Twitter at TFADpod. But wherever you are, look after yourselves and each other. Stay safe.